We are living in a computer-programmed reality. We are living in a computer-programmed reality, and the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed and some alteration in our reality occurs. We would have the overwhelming impression that we were reliving the present, déjà vu, perhaps in precisely the same way, hearing the same words, saying the same words. I submit that these impressions are valid and significant, and I will even say this: such an impression is a clue that at some past time point a variable was changed, reprogrammed as it were, and that because of this an alternative world branched off.
Good morning and welcome to another edition of 15 Minutes of Flame. I'm Robert Phoenix, and I hope you can hear me sufficiently today. Can I get a little feedback from the chat room that the audio is coming in loud and clear? Looks like it is. I'm just using a different setup today with the microphone and making sure that I'm hitting the correct level of impedance, and it looks like I am. How is everyone? Another crazy day in the neighborhood, in the global neighborhood. We're going to try to break some of that down for you this morning and look at some of the potential repercussions as to what's taking place and some of the players and all that stuff. I'm telling you, it's going to get crazy here. We're moving into the Mars-Pluto conjunction. By the way, Chiron in Aries is here. Went into Aries yesterday. And that'll be an interesting trip for a couple of months before it goes back into Pisces. And then one more entrance into Aries, and I did a nice interview with Heather Eland, and that's over on Facebook on her page, and I think on the Astrolotta page. I'm going to post it on my site today, and I'll probably mirror it on my YouTube channel, just so people can get a handle on what was talked about. It was really interesting during that process with Heather, who's terrific. It looks like I'm getting some feedback here in the chat room. Sounds fine. Clarity. All right. Thank you, my good friend Steve. It was really interesting what happened with that interview because we covered a lot of topics that were connected to Chiron and Aries, some of which included men, some of which included women, some of which included war, some of which included violence, some of which included the augmentation of the body, things like that. And it's amazing how many women that this interview actually triggered. And in fact, I think Lotta and Heather are going to do, and they're going to do a video on the response to that video. And it's going to be very, very interesting to see how women deal with other women commenting on how other women deal. I mean, it's gonna be fascinating. But that's kind of the world we're living in right now. It is a hall of mirrors. When was the last time you were in a hall of mirrors? I remember when I was a kid, my father used to take me to a playground called Playland in San Francisco. It was a grimy place. It was a grimy sort of, end of an era kind of experience. And they had the one thing that they had at Playland that was pretty cool was the fun house. I love the fun house. The fun house was great. In order to get into the fun house, you had to go through a mirror maze. And I remember there were points in time where I would have like little anxiety attacks. I was young. I was like 7 years old. Am I going to get out of here? Am I going to get out of here? Am I going to get out of here? Am I going to get through here? And eventually you did. And then that's really where the fun started. They had two things in the fun house, actually three. They were pretty tremendous. In this particular order, they had a giant slide. They had one of these enormous wooden slides. And you'd line up 4 kids in a row at the top, and you'd get a gunny sack. You'd slide down this thing. And it would have, like little humps in the slide, about 3 or 4 humps. So you go down, hit a hump, go down, hit a hump. And on some of these humps, probably like maybe the third one, you were catching air. It was great. You don't see those slides anymore, do you? Like after a while, they kind of migrated out into like a combination of like water parks and slides and stuff like that. Like they would actually have like those big plastic blue slides. Remember those? I think those are an insurance risk now, and you can't have them anymore. The world used to be a lot more fun. Was it more dangerous? Was it riskier? Probably. But in some ways, it was probably a lot safer, too. I think we've been insured from risk at a social level, but the inherent danger of the world has probably increased. So at least that's my perception. Anyway, that was the last time. Oh, and they had this other ride, which was great. It was a turntable. It was like a turntable, and you spin round and round and round in this thing. And they actually made it look like it was a turntable. Like there were paintings of like the tone arm and the volume, and so it was like and the guy who was operating the ride was like the DJ operating the turntable. It was it was creative. And so what would happen is the turntable would be stationary and all the kids would run onto the turntable. And then it would start spinning round and round and round and round, and then start to get really, really fast. And then it just start tossing kids off. And they'd start flying into the padded walls. Again, would this ride even exist today? You probably have to sign a 10-page disclaimer, or a 10-page insurance document so that you wouldn't sue the people that were running the turntable. So the whole idea was to stay in the center of the turntable and ride it out to the end. And my father said, you got to get directly in the center. That's how you can stay on it. So I would get as close to the center as possible. I got tossed off a few times. I figured out that if I use my hands and put them in a certain position so that I could basically shift the weight and the velocity, that I'd stand a better chance. So it was creating, almost like a ladder effect in my butt and my hands, and putting a lot of pressure on my hands. There was one time I willed myself to stay on this thing. And I did the entire time. And I think that might have been the last time I ever did that ride. Anyway, we're in a hall of mirrors, and we're going to try to break some of that down today. By the way, I'm doing my best to take coffee out of my life for a while. It's an experiment. I'm gonna see if I can go 30 days without coffee. and kind of track my biological and mental/biological response around that. So if I'm not completely on my game today, I apologize. I'm going to have to adjust to the gravity of a non-caffeinated brain, maybe for a few. We'll see how that goes. So let's get you caught up to speed here. There's a lot going on. April 18th, we are entering into the days of Molech. This is a time where the pagan ritual and sacrifice of burning children is, I wouldn't say it's recognized, although I'm sure by some people out there, they do recognize it. And I'm not sure we really want to know about that. No, do we? I certainly don't. But it's out there, and it happens. And it certainly took place during the burning of the Branch Davidian compound. And I believe that is today. So between now and 420, it's a pretty significant ritualistic, dark ritualistic space. Now, most of you out there are aware of the fact that Columbine happened on 420. And whatever happened in Columbine, there are a lot, Columbine is sort of the event that kicks everything off. And I remember when it happened. And of course, my radar went off. It's like, this doesn't smell right. And very quickly, I started to, accrue some facts. First of all, the first responders were there on the scene at Columbine in a heartbeat. Why? Because they were all about 3 or 4 blocks away, waiting for something to happen. One of the members of the Trench Coat Mafia, his father was a field agent in the Columbine area. And he was there in the scene to immediately deal with what happened. The Trench Coat Mafia was a group of young men and women who detested Christians. And Klebold and Harris were part of the Trench Coat Mafia. And you can see in their writings where there was a lot of hate there. There was a lot of hate there. Anyway, that's 420. And it's coming up. The other thing about Columbine, there were a lot of things about Columbine. I'm sorry, I just got distracted. There are a lot of things about Columbine that are really worth noting. Number one was the response. Number two, the fact that the early news reports out of Columbine were that there was multiple shooters and not just Klebold and Harris. That there were at least 3 or 4. That there might have been a hit squad that was in Columbine, in the high school. That was another one of those early pieces of information that seeped out. Also, I believe Dylan Klebold was on something called Luvox, which at the time I thought was quite important because it was an SSRI and a very disruptive one that could have potentially led to his psychopathic rogue behavior. So these are all the first bits and pieces of evidence that I tried to accrue when this whole Columbine thing happened. I wasn't buying any of it. At least not the official story. And then Dallas Goldbug came along and began to look at very explicit images and photos from Columbine. Now, Dallas Goldbug, a.k.a. Ed Chiarini, was an interesting character for about 2 years. It seemed as if he had cracked a code with the Greenberg family and kind of a traveling band of crisis actors that were employed to do any number of things, which on the surface does not seem that far-fetched, to be quite honest with you, because people have been doing things like this for a very, very long time. And then he began to widen that web and extend the net, and was looking at a number of different people who were celebrities playing different roles. And, and at some point, Ed just lost the plot. And I was like wondering why he was going in the specific direction. Like Alex Jones was Beau Bridges. Well, first of all, Beau Bridges is like 6'2". Beau Bridges is a tall man. Alex Jones is like, 5'8", 5'9". I mean, they're not even remotely similar in terms of height. So Ed started to lose the plot. But if you look at his early stuff, especially the Gabby Giffords material, I think is really good work and spot on, and it created the bedrock for everything that he would do after that. Some of which is good, a lot of which was leading you into cul-de-sacs and kind of utter madness. Anyway, one of the things he did with Columbine is he went back and he looked at the footage, and he pointed out that there was no blood. Like, as they were wheeling bodies out and people were in the gurneys, there was no blood in any of the footage. And I went back and looked at it, and I said, you know what? He's right. There is no blood. There's nothing happening here. Now, that's not to say that people weren't injured or died. I'm not going to go fall down that trap, that little rabbit hole, because that is a snare now. And but it's something worth noting, something worth paying attention to, because there was no blood. Anyway, we're in these days now, and 420, which is going to be Friday, we went from Friday the 13th to Friday 420. How about that for back-to-back Freaky Fridays? And there's going to be a walkout with kids in middle schools and in high schools all across the country, organized by the March for Our Lives people in Hare Hog. And I got an email yesterday from the principal of the middle school that my son attends, basically telling parents that there's going to be a walkout, and this is what's happening, and this is when it's going to occur. And I'm like, this is nuts. This is absolutely nuts. Now, contrast that with what's happening here in Fredericksburg, where there was an email sent out by the school, and the school says it does not support the walkout. And that if the children are going to walk out, they needed to meet a certain criterion. And there were questions that they had to answer about the Constitution. There are a number of things that they had to be able to address, and address it in a way that shows that they have some knowledge. And if they could do that adequately, then they could take a hike and walk around the track for 10 minutes or whatever it is they're going to do. So this is a vastly different response to the area that I just relocated from. And that should really kind of give you a thumbnail sketch of the difference between the two places. So when I got that email, I was like, oh my God, I gotta send this principal an email. So I did. And I said, don't forget that the Kip Kinkle and the Thurston High shooting, which took place on May 21st, 1998, happened. You may want to tell the kids about it so they can squeeze in one more walkout before the school year ends. A lot of people don't remember Kip Kinkle. Kip Kinkle was one of these kids in Oregon. He was a tubby, chubby kid. He was on SSRIs and all kinds of stuff. And Kip Kinkle had enough. Now, that's a legitimate event. That event happened because they bound him up, and you can see him. He's being walked off by the ATF. Like, that actually occurred. So I sent the principal that email. And she said, thank you for the reminder. Okay. I bet she doesn't even know who Kip Kinkle was or what that event was about. This is the state of America. Sorry to say, our schools have been infiltrated for the most part. And our children are being programmed. Social values are being implemented, introduced, and indoctrinated. Now, you may agree with the social value, and that's fine. That's fine. But if you disagree with the social value and you live in an area like Austin, well, good luck. Good luck. I wonder if the teacher would feel the same way if students walked out because of the mistreatment of young people in Gaza. I wonder how they'd feel about that. Or I wonder if they'd support a walkout for kids who were pro-life. I wonder how they'd feel about that. Something tells me it wouldn't get the same kind of support. However, conversely, here in Fredericksburg, if kids wanted to walk out, support of pro-life, I'm sure they'd have the local PD kind of running the red carpet out there for them. It's just it's like living in two separate realities, two different universes. It's very unusual, and I can see them from this perspective and what's taking place. Anyway, Friday, 420, you're going to see all kinds of footage about kids walking out, and David Hogg will, I'm sure, have a lot to say. You'll have Emma Gonzalez, and they'll go to her for quotes. They better hurry up. School's almost out. Apparently, there's a push in Washington, D.C. to get 16-year-olds to vote, to move the voting age to 16. Of course they want that. I talked about this. A couple months ago. I could just see it. It's like, oh, they're going to try and lower the voting age. Want to get as many kids on board as possible. They've got them hot and heavy now. Got them all lathered and worked up. Get them in the polls. What did David Knight call America's youth? Youthful dupes. Useful dupes being, of course, a term that was applied to people who were able to support communism. Useful dupes. Youthful dupes. Should be an interesting Friday. Every day is interesting in the Trump White House, isn't it? I'm telling you, the shit has hit the fan. The shit has hit the fan in Trump land. This whole thing with Michael Cohen, Stormy Daniels, the FBI raiding Michael Cohen's offices, and now the latest piece, which most of you know about, is the judge that is going to be presiding over the Michael Cohen case. And the judge is named Kimba Wood, who was a Playboy Playmate at one point in time, was involved in a steamy sex scandal, and both of those precluded her from becoming an attorney, a member of the Supreme Court. Bill Clinton, of course, wanted her to be one of his Supreme Court appointees. Didn't fly. Here's a little story. Wood was dubbed the love judge in 1995 when the soon-to-be ex-wife of a multimillionaire Wall Street financier found his diary, which was filled with passionate prose about his trysts with the jurist. Money man Frank Richardson gushed about the time he spent with Wood, describing her as absolutely wonderful, very intelligent, a complete woman, and able to give love wonderfully and freely. The illicit romance began in the spring of that year with dinner parties at ritzy restaurants and weekend getaways at Wood's country home. At the time, Kimba was married to a Time magazine columnist, but the two were about to divorce. Richardson, who was worth an estimated $157 million at the time, wrote in superlatives about the judge, even describing one fireside rendezvous at the country home as beautiful in 8 hours as I have spent in my life. He and Wood married in 1999. Oh, what a nice end to that story. Legal Eagles have also praised Wood, who graduated from Harvard Law School, and earned a master's degree from the London School of Economics. While a student in England, she worked for a week at a Playboy casino, training as a croupier, but she quit because she thought the gig was silly. Even before the affair, Wood had made headlines as a tough judge presiding over cases involving high-profile defendants, including junk bond king Michael Milton. In 1993, Bill Clinton nominated her Attorney General. My bad. Bill Clinton nominated her to become the first female Attorney General. But she withdrew from the nomination after the White House had learned that she had hired an undocumented immigrant as a babysitter. Well, now, that would have gotten her a fast pass to the Attorney General seat. That would have been seen as a badge of honor now, don't you think? Wood, who was Clinton's second choice for the AG post, didn't break the law employing the nanny, and in fact paid the woman's taxes. But the White House asked her to withdraw. Her situation was similar to Clinton's first AG nomination, Zoe Baird. So we have women who can't really look after their own kids, so they have to pay somebody to do that. Not uncommon. Baird bowed out of consideration for the job, but she drew criticism for employing two undocumented immigrants as housekeepers. I'm telling you, it'd be a badge of honor now. They'd have a parade for Baird and Wood. So Wood essentially took all of Michael Cohen's documents and did not keep them sealed. She opened them up and put them essentially in a database for a lot of people to look at. So one of the things that will probably come out from this is a series of leaks. And this is going to be very difficult for Trump to deal with, I'm telling you right now. Because Cohen has lots of files, lots of receipts, lots of emails. I mean, he's got Trump's history. And the FBI, they raided his office without any really kind of due process. They just went in, stormed in, took everything. Yes, that was purposeful. They stormed in, took everything, and now it's going to be all that material is not going to be sealed. I mean, it's really ironic, totally ironic that Hillary Clinton, and again, this is not sour grapes for Donald Trump. This is just understanding and looking at the event sort of in total. And it's Hillary Clinton was involved in some really dirty shit. I mean, money laundering, the whole fiasco with Haiti, pay for play, running a proxy war through her server in Libya, helping to create ISIS. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. There's Uranium One, and not to mention all the potential sex trafficking that's associated with Hillary and the Clinton Foundation and Haiti. I mean, it's there. And no, there was never any storming of any offices by the FBI or any other group. No, in fact, Hillary got what? She got the white label treatment. She got the white glove treatment. She got the tarmac treatment. And they have got it out for Trump. And there are two things that could happen. Number one, after the midterms, if they flip the House, I guarantee you they will start impeachment proceedings. That'll happen. If that doesn't happen, then they will put Trump in a vice grip, and they'll squeeze him. He'll do whatever they want. Whatever they want. TPP, yeah, give me the paper, I'll sign it. DACA, yep, give me the paper, I'll sign it. Give me the doc, I'll sign it. Whatever you want me to do, I'm your guy. They'll just sit back there and then they'll roast him. Then they'll roast him, and then they'll kick his husk to the curb when it's all done. Now, this is not a good scenario. And I'll tell you why. What happens when people are cornered? They're dangerous. They're really dangerous. You corner an animal, and that's when the animal is at its most dangerous. And the possibility of Trump and his neocon buddies engaging in a broader, wider conflict, it's quite possible. That could be the poison pill that Trump has. It's like, screw you. You're going to take me down? Well, here's what I'm going to do. I'm taking this country to war. And that's probably what they want anyway. So they'll get what they want in either direction, which is really unfortunate. And this is the way so-called democracy works. Robert Mueller has been playing around with this special counsel since Trump came into office. And nothing's come out of it. Nothing. Some really, really weak, and I mean weak, depositions for some Russian dudes. Like, that really means a lot. It means nothing. They'll never come here. They'll never be transported from Russia to the United States to face Robert Mueller. It's ridiculous. Nothing's come out of it. So, of course, they have to, widen their net. And the Stormy Daniels thing now is the smoking gun, but it was really being able to get into Michael Cohen's office and get those files. There's a broader and wider kind of assault going on at the same time. I don't know if you've been watching Alex Jones much or at all. I watch him for entertainment purposes and to see what's going on with Alex, and he's back with Trump again. I think they've made up. They broke up on Friday night, but I think they made up. I think somebody told Alex to make up with Trump. However, the parents of Noah Posner, who was one of the Sandy Hook kids, have each decided to sue Alex Jones for $1 million apiece. So if you watch Alex Jones, about the first 15 minutes or so of his show are dedicated to him defending himself against the ongoing slew of lawsuits, which is, for all intents and purposes, kind of handicapping him in a lot of ways. I mean, psychologically, probably monetarily. And I'm watching the comments, and a lot of people go to Alex Jones just because they want to hear a different version of the news. I mean, they're not even really like Alex Jones heads. But the state of the news has gotten so bad that that's where they go to get their news. And some of it is actually kind of an uncut version of what's happening. You can even see those people beginning to get tired of the 15 to 20 minutes where Jones is defending himself and not doing a good job, by the way. If I were him, I would probably just leave all that stuff alone and put it aside and just focus on the task at hand, which is whatever it is for him. So that's going on. He's being literally assaulted by these lawsuits. Trump is under fire constantly. His lawyer's office is raided. Sean Hannity now under fire because he did not disclose the fact that Michael Cohen has represented him. So now he and Donald Trump share the same lawyer. And how do we know this? Well, good old Alan Dershowitz showed up on Sean Hannity's show and called him on it. Oh, okay, so now we've got Sean Hannity beginning to do a bit of the perp walk. Laura Ingraham. Again, I don't watch these people. I know who they are. Of course, she's been under fire from the March for Our Lives people. And sponsors have left. Some sponsors have stuck around and stayed with her. Tucker Carlson, well, I think Tucker is squeaky clean. He certainly was singing a different tune about Syria a few days later. So this is an interesting time because there are targets now inside of a certain political slant. Call it conservatives, call it the alt-right, whatever you want to call it, probably more along the lines of the conservatives. They're under fire, and they are under attack. And again, this is part of what I talked about last week was this whole notion that we're already at war. There's a war going on. If you can't see it, you can't step back and recognize it, you're not paying attention. Now, let's bring this back to QAnon. And by the way, I didn't mean to insult anybody about QAnon. I wasn't trying to, degrade your interest in QAnon, because I think part of what QAnon is bringing to the table is this kind of mass awakening. And somebody posted on the YouTube channel a really, really good example of what they thought QAnon was, which is kind of a deep military-industrial complex version, not the deep state version, of Tokyo Rose. And I thought that was really, pretty insightful observation, which I would tend to agree with. But I'm telling you right now, if this QAnon stuff is real, and if these indictments are real, and if this big plan is real, and everything's going according to plan, well, they may want to start picking up the pace here with the plan. I'm just saying they want to maybe start picking up the pace. Q, if you're listening, you guys might want to, put a little more heat behind what's going on there. Because it certainly looks on the surface as though there is a major insurgence taking place. And it's interesting to step back and watch and see it all unfold. And here we are in lovely Fredericksburg, where the kids are not being supported to walk out on 420. Amen. Hallelujah. Thank you for clarity and using some logic. Like, yeah, if you're going to walk out, maybe you can actually tell us 3 or 4 amendments of the Constitution, right? Maybe you can talk about the Second Amendment test cases. If you're that politically aware, let's put your politically aware knowledge to the test, boys and girls. Anyway. So the next few days should be quite interesting, to say the least. From the 420 perspective, the days of Molech, the March for Our Lives in our schools, the ongoing psychodrama with Trump, and the left, and the rogue elements in the FBI. And by the way, wasn't James Comey just the most pathetic person? My God. That interview was... How do people do things like that? I don't understand it. It's like he was trying to really show himself as somebody who has this incredibly high moral ground. And his moral ground was just completely unapproachable, right? It's like, in the meantime, he's just disclosing himself right and left to be a whiny little shit. And then he brings his wife on. Oh, I was so disappointed when Donald Trump won. I'm an avid. I mean, does that help your case at all? And I know he's got a book to support and sell. I know he thinks that going on George Stephanopoulos is going to really punch those book sales. No, I don't think so. If anything, it's going to flatline those book sales. What a world we live in. Oh, by the way, another thing that Kimba Wood did, she presided over George Soros' wedding. That's right. She married George Soros and his third wife. Could you imagine sleeping with George Soros? What that would be like? Oh, my God. Or how about Sheldon Adelson? Could you imagine sleeping with him? Ugh. Oh, but I'm sure there's a great deal of love that's part of that equation. Great deal of love. Serenity now. All right. Is there anything else that I need to bring to your attention other than the fact that Israel is now more horny than war forever? They shot at some Iranian bases inside of Syria because Iran's been helping Syria against these nasty little rebels who are almost beaten. And now Israel, of course, is making the case that Iran and Syria want to start a war, that they're dangerous, that they're going to be the targets of preemptive strikes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's happening. Oh, by the way, a big round of applause to Durham, North Carolina. Durham, North Carolina ended its relationship with the Durham police force being trained by the IDF. How about that? If I had an applause button, I would hit it multiple times. Some of you may be aware of the fact that police departments all across the country, ever since 9/11, have been trained by the IDF. What they do is they send a couple of people over there. The IDF, of course, has a lot of experience dealing with Palestinians. So they teach American sergeants and captains and police chiefs, whoever goes over there to take on the training, they basically indoctrinate them as to how to deal with people based on how they deal with the Palestinians. With the idea that ultimately criminals and people on the other side of the blue line are, for all intents and purposes, Palestinians, even though we're really Americans. And America is the new Gaza. Well, Durham, North Carolina, hats off to you. You decided to end your affiliation with the IDF so your police officers can be trained once again with a different set of protocols, industry standards, and practices. And it was a BDS move, and there was a local group that kept putting pressure on the Durham police force and the local government. And if you want an example of how you can make a difference locally, there you go. There was a group who were passionate. They presented their case, and who knows what else they did. But it was enough for that contract to end. So congratulations, Durham, North Carolina. So we're going to end on that positive note. And let that be a source of inspiration for you today as you go out into the world, where you can make a difference in your own life and another person's life as well. And when you band together with others who have the same intention and inspired by the same noble goals of freedom and liberty, true justice, compassion and empathy, there's a lot you can do. There's a lot that can be accomplished. Let's do a little time tunnel. This is an interesting time tunnel day before we get out of here. Well, today, of course, is April 18th, and it's an interesting day in history. April 18th is the 108th day of the year. How about that? And there are 257 days left in 2018. So let's get into this. So yesterday we talked about the diet of worms, and that was essentially the trial of Martin Luther. And this is the second day. And on this day, he refuses to recant his teachings, despite the risk of excommunication. Let's see. What else do we have here? In 1689, Bostonians rose up in rebellion against Sir Edmund Andros. Those Bostonians are a rebellious bunch, aren't they? In 1775, the American Revolution, the British advancement by sea begins. Paul Revere and other writers warned the countryside of the troop movements. Did you know Paul Revere was a Mason? I know you knew that. A happy birthday, University of Alabama. Today you were founded in 1831. Roll Tide. In 1857, The Spirits Book by Allan Kardec was published, marking the birth of spiritualism in France. The Spirits book is part of the Spirits codification and is regarded as one of the 5 fundamental works of Spiritism. It was published by educator Allan Kardec on April 18th, 1857. It was the first and remains the most important Spiritist book. So it's about contacting with spirits, disincarnate spirits. This is the day of the big earthquake, the 1906 earthquake in San Francisco. Destroyed a lot of the city. 4 years before that, there was a massive earthquake in Guatemala. 7.5. It was a severe. It was rated severe on the Mercalli intensity. In fact, it was the maximum. Might have been one of the most powerful earthquakes in modern history. 7.5. Let's see. 1909, Joan of Arc is beatified in Rome. My mother visited the tomb of Joan of Arc while she was pregnant with me. So I was there. Let's see, what else do we have? In 1912, the Cunard liner, the RMS Carpathia, brings 700 survivors, in fact 705, from the Titanic to New York City. For all you seam heads out there, that means baseball lovers, Steve, this goes out to you. Yankee Stadium opened today in 1923. How's that Ruth built? A lot going on in this day, right? The BBC announced that there is no news in their evening report in 1930. Isn't that interesting? Tonight, there is no news. And then they went out to the pub and got hammered. World War II, the Doolittle raid on Japan. Tokyo, Yokohama, Kobe, and Nagoya are bombed. And Jimmy Doolittle, well, he became a war hero. Let's see, what else do we have? A lot of World War II stuff. A lot of bombings. A lot of people dying. Let's see what else. Uh, 1954, Nasser seized power in Egypt. 1980, the Republic of Zimbabwe, formerly Rhodesia, comes into being with Canaan Banana as the country's first president. I'm not making that up. The guy's name is Canaan Banana. Did that mean that Zimbabwe became a banana republic? Do they do this stuff on purpose? The Zimbabwean dollar replaces the Rhodesian dollar as the official currency. Well, how'd that work out? Not so great. Let's see, what else do we have here? 1988. The United States launches Operation Praying Mantis against Iranian naval forces in the largest naval battle since World War II. Bet you didn't know that. Let's see, what else do we have here? In 1996, in Lebanon, at least 106 civilians are killed when the aforementioned IDF shelled the United Nations compound at Qana, where more than 800 civilians had taken refuge. Nobody did shit about that. Let's see. And we got the big Red River flood in 1997. And then some bombings and some suicide bombings and yada, yada, yada. Today is the birthday of Tony Mottola, the American guitarist and composer. My parents used to play records by Tony Mottola on their hi-fi stereo system. Boy, the good old days, man. Must be Mars and Cancer. Anybody else today that's born that's remotely interesting? Let's see. Robert Christgau, the American journalist and rock critic. And Kathy Acker, the poet, punk rock poet. She was born today. Robert Hansen, American FBI agent and double agent. James Woods. James Woods might have the most interesting Twitter feed in the country, maybe in the world. Of course, he's an Aries. Happy birthday, James Woods. All right, why don't we get on out of here? Well, I guess for the first caffeine-free show, it wasn't too bad, right? I consider it a win. Okay, you know the drill. Use your head to discern what's real, your heart to stay open to what's possible. Keep on moving, folks. Keep on moving. Keep on doing your thing. Keep creating. Keep breathing. Hold that line. Because all we need is just one victory.
We are living in a computer-programmed reality. We are living in a computer-programmed reality, and the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed and some alteration in our reality occurs. We would have the overwhelming impression that we were reliving the present, déjà vu, perhaps in precisely the same way, hearing the same words, saying the same words. I submit that these impressions are valid and significant, and I will even say this: such an impression is a clue that at some past time point a variable was changed, reprogrammed as it were, and that because of this an alternative world branched off.